"Give up your condo keys now," my father snarled at dinner. "It's family property." My mother nodded coldly, so I dropped the keys and fled. The next morning, my bank called about a $1,200,000, 0 cents fraud attempt. The Seattle skyline glittered through my floor-to-ceiling windows, a mosaic of steel and light that never failed to take my breath away. My waterfront condo in Belltown was more than a home. It was my rebellion, my triumph, my proof that I, Claire Morgan, had clawed my way from nothing to something extraordinary. At 34, I was the CEO of Nexus AI, a tech startup that had just secured a $10 million 0 cents funding round, a deal that cemented my name in the cutthroat world of Silicon Valley's northern outpost. Last Sunday, I threw open my doors to celebrate, expecting to share this milestone with the people who should have mattered most, my family. Instead, that night, my world cracked wide open, and the shards are still cutting me as I write this. The air was thick with the scent of truffle risotto and aged bourbon as I set the table, my hands steady despite the nervous flutter in my chest. I'd spent hours perfecting the menu, a gourmet spread meant to impress my parents, David and Susan, who'd always dismissed my ambitions as foolish dreams. This dinner wasn't just about the funding. It was my chance to prove I'd made it, to show them the daughter they'd underestimated was now a force to be reckoned with. My condo, with its sleek marble countertops and custom-scented smart home system, was the backdrop for this moment of validation. I'd even splurged on a bottle of 25-year-old Macallan, a nod to my father's taste for the finer things, though I suspected he'd find fault with it anyway. The doorbell chimed at 5:00 p.m. sharp, and I smoothed my tailored black dress, forcing a smile as I opened the door. My parents stood there, their faces as unreadable as ever, but my stomach dropped when I saw my brother, Ethan, looming behind them. His uninvited presence was a curveball I hadn't prepared for. "Hope you don't mind," my mother said, brushing past me without waiting for a reply, her heels clicking on my hardwood floor. Either had no plans, so we brought him along. My father handed me a cheap bottle of Merlot, the kind you grab at a gas station, and muttered, "Your favorite?" though I'd never touched the stuff. I swallowed my irritation and gestured them inside, already recalculating portions in my head to stretch the meal. Dinner started innocently enough, though the conversation felt like navigating a minefield. My mother, Susan, with her perfectly coiffed hair and practiced smile, commented on my minimalist decor, her tone dripping with judgment. "It's so sparse, Claire. Don't you ever want to make it feel like a home?" My father, David, a retired contractor with a permanent scowl, inspected the wiring for my smart home system, pointing out a junction box he claimed was shoddy. Ethan, 30 and still living in my parents' Tacoma basement, barely spoke, his eyes glued to his phone, smirking at texts I wasn't privy to. I pushed through the awkwardness, pouring bourbon and serving the risotto, determined to steer the night toward my triumph. When I finally shared my news, the $10 million 0 cents funding round, the investors calling me a visionary, the silence was so heavy it felt like a physical weight. My mother broke it first, her voice saccharine. "That's nice, dear, but won't that mean even longer hours? It's not healthy." My father chewed his risotto slowly, his eyes narrowing. "How much are you personally pocketing from this deal?" he asked, as if my success was a ledger he was entitled to audit. Ethan snorted, muttering, "Must be nice to play with computers all day and call it work." I felt the familiar sting of their dismissal, but I pressed on, forcing a smile. It's a huge step for Nexus AI. I've worked years for this. The meal dragged on. Their questions about my company growing oddly specific. My father wanted to know about my condo's mortgage, bank, interest rate, term length. His tone casual, but his eyes sharp. My mother kept circling back to family heirlooms, insisting I store her grandmother's antique vases in my condo because their attic was too damp. I chalked it up to their usual meddling, ignoring the unease creeping up my spine. Looking back, I should have seen the red flags waving like neon signs, but I was too caught up in my fantasy of earning their approval, too blind to the storm brewing right in front of me. After dessert, a dark chocolate tart I'd baked from scratch, my father's demeanor shifted. He set down his coffee cup with a deliberate clink, his face hardening as if he'd flipped a switch. "Claire," he said, his voice low and formal, "we need to talk about your situation." I froze, the word situation landing like a stone in my gut. "What situation?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. He leaned forward, his hands clasped like a judge about to deliver a verdict. "This condo, it's too much for one person. It's time it served the family." The room seemed to tilt, the skyline outside blurring as his words sank in. My mother nodded, her lips pursed in that sanctimonious way she'd perfected over decades. "We've discussed it, Claire," she said. "Your father and I raised you, sacrificed everything for you. Your education, your opportunities, all of it came from us. This success you're flaunting, it's our investment." Ethan leaned back in his chair, a smirk playing on his lips as he doodled on a napkin. A crude sketch of a bar counter where my home office now stood. "I'm thinking we rip out that techie nonsense," he said. "Make it a proper family space." I stared at them, waiting for the punchline, for someone to crack a smile and admit this was a sick joke. But their faces were stone-cold serious, expectant, like they'd rehearsed this moment. "This is my condo," I said slowly, each word a struggle to keep my voice from shaking. "I bought it with my money. My name is on the deed, the mortgage, everything." My father waved a hand, dismissing my words like they were irrelevant. "We're family, Claire. What's yours is ours. That's how it works." The air thickened with tension, and I felt my pulse hammering in my ears. "No," I said, louder now, my hands gripping the table. "That's not how it works. I earned this. I paid for it. It's mine." My mother's face twisted into a mask of disappointment, her voice cutting like a blade. "After all we've done for you, this is how you repay us? With selfishness?" Ethan's smirk vanished, replaced by a glare that sent a chill down my spine. He reached across the table, picking up a carving knife from the charcuterie board, twirling it lazily in his hand. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be, sis," he said, his tone light but laced with menace. My breath caught, the glint of the blade reflecting the candlelight. Was this really happening? My own brother? Threatening me in my own home? My parents didn't flinch, their eyes locked on me, waiting for my surrender. Something inside me snapped, not into fear, but into a quiet, burning resolve. I reached into my purse, pulled out my condo keys, and dropped them on the table with a clatter. "Take them," I said, my voice flat. I grabbed my phone, wallet, and car keys, ignoring my father's shout of, "You'll regret this," as I walked out, the door slamming behind me. The Seattle rain hit me like a slap as I stumbled to my Tesla, my hands shaking so badly I could barely unlock it. I drove to Ava's loft in Capitol Hill, tears blurring the city lights, my mind replaying the scene on a loop. How had my family, my own blood, turned into strangers. Ava was waiting when I arrived, her face paling as I recounted the night. "They didn't just cross a line, Claire," she said, pouring me a glass of wine. "They're trying to steal your life. You need a lawyer, now." I crashed on her couch, too wired to sleep, my phone buzzing with texts from Ethan. "You're overreacting. Family shares. Drop this or you'll lose more than keys." I muted him, but the words burrowed into me, a poison I couldn't shake. Growing up in Tacoma, I'd lived under my parents' iron rule, their control cloaked as protection. They dictated my friends, banned me from wearing jeans they deemed too tight, even monitored my phone calls. I thought it was love, their way of shielding me from a cruel world. But as I got older, I saw it for what it was. A leash, tightening whenever I dared to stray. High school was my first rebellion. They wanted me at Tacoma Community College, living at home, forever under their thumb. I applied to Stanford in secret, forging their signatures on financial aid forms, praying I wouldn't get caught. When the acceptance letter arrived with a full scholarship, they couldn't argue with free, but their disapproval was a silent scream. Stanford was my liberation. I dove into computer science, discovering a talent for coding that felt like breathing for the first time. I built apps, joined hackathons, and found a passion for tech that could change lives. By 28, I'd founded Nexus AI, a startup focused on data privacy, pouring every ounce of myself into its algorithms and vision. My condo was the physical proof of that hustle. I'd saved for years, skipping vacations and eating ramen to afford the down payment. My parents had pushed me to buy a fixer-upper in their Tacoma suburb, or worse, invest in their crumbling rental properties. "You're wasting money on that glass box," my father scoffed at my housewarming, ignoring the smart lights I'd programmed myself. My mother refused to step onto the rooftop garden, calling it pretentious. That condo was my sanctuary. Every switch, every pixel, coded to my specifications. It wasn't just a home, it was my declaration of independence. The $10 million 0 cents funding round was the cherry on top, a validation of everything I'd sacrificed. I'd pitched to venture capitalists who saw genius in my platform, not just profit. I'd hoped sharing this with my family would finally make them see me, not the obedient daughter they wanted, but the woman I'd become. Instead, they'd turned my moment of pride into a battlefield. I should have listened to Ava, who'd warned me for years. "They're not proud of you, Claire," she'd said after they dismissed my Forbes 30 under 30 nod. "They're threatened. They'll drag you down to keep you theirs." As I lay on Ava's couch, the city's hum filtering through her windows, I couldn't stop replaying their words. Had I missed something? Had I somehow invited this betrayal? At 2 a.m., my phone lit up with a security alert from my condo. Motion sensors detected movement in my home office. My heart raced as I opened the app, the live feed showing a shadowy figure rifling through my desk. The footage was grainy, but I recognized Ethan's silhouette, his movements deliberate as he stuffed papers into a bag. I called 911, my voice trembling, but by the time police arrived, he was gone, my safe cracked open and empty. Morning brought worse news. My bank called, a voice tight with urgency. "Miss Morgan, someone attempted to change your mortgage account yesterday, trying to add co-owners. David and Susan Morgan. They had your social security number." My blood ran cold. While I'd been plating their risotto, they'd been plotting to hijack my home. I confirmed I was the sole owner, instructing the bank to lock my account, but the violation left me reeling. They had my social security number, probably from my childhood documents they'd never returned. What else did they have? What else were they planning? I met Ava for coffee, my hands still shaking as I recounted the night's events. "This isn't just greed," she said, her eyes fierce. "They're desperate. You need to fight back, Claire, or they'll take everything." She slid me the card of Rachel Lee, a lawyer known for handling high-stakes fraud cases. I called Rachel from the cafe, my voice cracking as I explained the situation. She was calm, professional, promising to meet me that afternoon. "This is serious, Claire," she said. "We'll need to act fast to protect your assets." At Rachel's downtown office, surrounded by law books and city views, I spilled everything: the dinner, the keys, the break-in, the bank call. She listened intently, her pen flying across her notepad. "First, we'll file for an emergency restraining order," she said. "Then, we'll investigate their financials. People don't pull stunts like this unless they're drowning." By evening, her investigator had dug up a bombshell. My parents were $200,000, 0 cents in debt, credit cards, a second mortgage, a foreclosed rental property in Tacoma. Worse, they'd tried to seize my grandmother's estate 10 years ago, a scheme thwarted only by her lawyer's intervention. The revelation hit like a punch. My grandmother, who'd always been kind but distant, had died when I was in college. My parents handled her affairs, claiming she'd left nothing worth fighting over. Now I wondered what they'd hidden, what they'd taken. Rachel's voice pulled me back. "Claire, this isn't their first rodeo. They've got a pattern, and you're their latest target." She drafted a cease and desist letter and filed for the restraining order, warning me to stay vigilant, change your locks, upgrade your security, and don't go home alone. That night, driving back to Ava's, I noticed a pickup truck tailing me, its headlights too close in the rain. My pulse spiked as I took a detour, the truck following every turn. At a red light, I glimpsed Ethan's face in the driver's seat, his expression unreadable. I floored it through the green, weaving through traffic until I lost him, my hands slick on the wheel. At Ava's, I collapsed, the fear catching up to me. "They're not stopping," I whispered. Ava hugged me tight. "You're not alone, Claire. We'll get through this." The next morning, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You can't hide. Family owns you." I forwarded it to Rachel, who added it to our file. Then came a call from my CTO, Marcus, his voice tense. "Claire, we got an anonymous email claiming you're siphoning company funds. The board's asking questions." My stomach dropped. My parents weren't just after my condo. They were targeting Nexus AI. My life's work. I assured Marcus it was a lie, promising to clear it up. But the damage was done. Doubt was spreading like wildfire. I met police at my condo to assess the break-in, my heart sinking as I saw the chaos. My safe was empty. Passports, Nexus AI patents, investor contracts, gone. My desk drawers were ransacked, my computer's login screen flashing an error. Too many failed attempts. The officers took photos, promising to investigate, but their faces said it all. Family disputes were messy, and proof was hard to come by. As they left, I found a note taped to my fridge, the handwriting unmistakably my father's. "Blood is thicker than lawyers. Give up or lose everything." I called Rachel, my voice shaking as I read her the note. "This is escalation," she said. "We'll add harassment to the charges. Stay somewhere safe tonight." I packed a bag and checked into a hotel, my condo no longer feeling like home. Lying in the sterile room, I scrolled through old family photos on my phone. Christmas mornings, beach trips, my high school graduation. Had it all been a lie? Had their love always been a transaction, waiting for me to pay up? The next day, Rachel called with more bad news. Your parents opened 2 credit cards in your name, racking up $50,000, 0 cents. We've frozen them, but this is identity theft. I felt like I was drowning, every new betrayal pulling me under. I'd bailed them out before, $5,000, 0 cents for their taxes, $3,000, 0 cents for their car, never asking for repayment. I thought it was what family did. Now I saw it as leverage, a debt they'd always planned to collect. At work, the board demanded an emergency meeting, their faces grim as they grilled me about the anonymous email. I presented bank records, proving every cent was accounted for, but the scrutiny left me raw. We trust you, Claire, the chairman said, but perception matters. Keep this quiet. I nodded, swallowing my anger, knowing my parents had planted the seed of doubt. That night, my condo's security app pinged again. Someone had tried to disable the camera. The footage showed Ethan on my balcony, a crowbar in hand, fleeing when the floodlights snapped on. I reported it to the police, but the fear was constant now, a shadow I couldn't shake. Rachel pushed for a fraud complaint, citing the credit cards and mortgage tampering. We're building a strong case, she said, but you need to protect yourself. Consider a private security detail. I hesitated, the cost daunting, but another text from Ethan, "You're not untouchable," convinced me. I hired a guard, a former Marine named Jake, who shadowed me discreetly, his presence a grim reminder of how far things had spiraled. Days later, I got a call from a tech journalist, her voice probing. "Claire, we're running a story about Nexus AI's leadership instability. Sources claim you're erratic, possibly unfit to lead. Care to comment?" I froze, realizing my parents had fed the smear to the press. I denied it, but the story ran, a vicious hit piece that tanked our stock value overnight. Investors called, panicked, threatening to pull out. I spent hours in crisis mode, reassuring them, but the damage was done. My dream was crumbling, and my family was holding the wrecking ball. The restraining order hearing was a circus. My parents showed up in their Sunday best, my mother dabbing fake tears, my father playing the wounded patriarch. Their lawyer, a slick type named Greg Walsh, claimed it was all a misunderstanding, that they'd only wanted to guide my success. Rachel presented our evidence: bank records, security footage, the threatening note. Methodically dismantling their lie, Judge Laura Bennett, a no-nonsense woman with sharp eyes, didn't buy their act. "This is a pattern of predation," she said, granting a permanent restraining order and warning them against further contact. As we left the courtroom, my mother called out, "Claire, we're still your family." I kept walking, Rachel's hand on my elbow, but the words echoed in my head. Family. What did that even mean anymore? That night, I got a call from my Aunt Lisa, my mother's sister, who'd stayed silent until now. "I'm proud of you," she said softly. "They tried the same with your grandmother. Nearly drained her accounts. I stopped them, and they cut me off. You're not alone." Her words were a lifeline, a reminder that blood didn't define loyalty. But the victory was short-lived. 2 days later, my condo's fire alarm blared, the app showing flames on my rooftop garden. Firefighters found a shattered Molotov cocktail, the gas line inches from disaster. Ethan was arrested, his fingerprints on the bottle, but he made bail within hours, his glare promising more to come. I moved to a safe house, a nondescript rental in Queen Anne, my life now a series of locked doors and coded alarms. Rachel uncovered more. An encrypted USD from my stolen safe hinted at my parents' ties to a shady real estate syndicate, possibly using my condo as collateral in a deal gone sour. As I write this, I'm staring at the Seattle skyline from a stranger's window, my condo a crime scene, my company teetering, my family unrecognizable. A whistleblower email just landed in my inbox, claiming Ethan's working with a rival tech firm to sabotage Nexus AI. My grandmother's old lawyer called, hinting at a secret will that could expose my parents' past frauds. And a cryptic text from an unknown number warns, check your offshore account. I don't know what's true, what's next, or who I can trust, but one thing's clear. I'm not the obedient daughter they raised. I'm Claire Morgan, and I'll fight for what's mine, no matter the cost. What would you do if your family turned on you? Share your thoughts below, and if this story hits home, like and subscribe for more tales of resilience and truth. Stay tuned, I'm just getting started. The safe house in Queen Anne was a sterile cage, its beige walls and generic furniture a far cry from my Belltown condo's sleek elegance. Each night I stared at the Seattle skyline from a window that wasn't mine, the city's pulse taunting me with a freedom I'd lost. My name is Claire Morgan, and at 34, I'm the CEO of Nexus AI, a tech startup I built from a dorm room dream into a $10 million, 0 cents powerhouse. But my family, my own blood, had turned my triumph into a battlefield, trying to steal not just my home, but my entire life. The permanent restraining order against my parents, David and Susan, and my brother Ethan, should have been a victory. Instead, it unleashed a war I wasn't prepared for, one that pushed me to the edge of everything I'd fought to become. The days after the court hearing were a blur of paranoia and survival. My condo, once my sanctuary, was now a crime scene, cordoned off after Ethan's Molotov cocktail scorched my rooftop garden. The fire hadn't spread, thank God, but the charred remains of my jasmine vines felt like a metaphor for my life. Beautiful things burned by those meant to protect me. I'd hired Jake, a former Marine turned security guard, whose quiet presence was both a comfort and a reminder that my family had forced me into hiding. My phone buzzed constantly with notifications, security alerts, investor emails, and venomous texts from distant relatives, swayed by my parents' social media sob story. How could you turn on your own blood? My cousin Tara wrote, her words echoing the dozens of others flooding my inbox. They didn't know about the stolen keys, the slashed tires, the identity theft, or the Molotov cocktail. They only saw the narrative my parents had spun. Claire, the ungrateful daughter, hoarding her success while her family suffered. Rachel Lee, my lawyer, was a lifeline in the chaos. Her downtown office became my war room, its walls lined with legal books that promised order in a world gone mad. They're escalating because they lost in court, she said, reviewing the latest evidence. A grainy still from my condo's cameras showing Ethan's face, crowbar in hand on my balcony. We need to tighten your security and prepare for their next move. She'd uncovered more about my parents' financial ruin. $200,000, 0 cents in debt, a foreclosed rental property, and now whispers of ties to a real estate syndicate known for shady deals in Tacoma's underbelly. The encrypted USB stolen from my safe, recovered by police in Ethan's truck, was our only clue to their deeper motives. but it was locked with a password I couldn't crack. I'd moved my operations to Nexus AI's headquarters, a glass-walled office in Pioneer Square, where I could at least pretend to control something, but even there, the fallout followed. My board was rattled by the smear campaign, anonymous emails claiming I'd embezzled funds, a tech blog's hit piece questioning my mental stability. I'd spent hours proving my innocence, but the damage lingered. Two key investors were wavering, and a $2 million 0 cents client had already jumped ship, citing instability. My CTO, Marcus, was loyal but strained, fielding panicked calls from stakeholders while I fought to keep Nexus AI afloat. "Claire, you're the heart of this company," he said one evening, his voice heavy with worry, "but we can't take many more hits like this." The pressure was relentless, but the danger was worse. One night, as Jake escorted me to my rental car, a black SUV peeled out from an alley, its headlights blinding as it swerved toward us. Jake shoved me behind a dumpster, his hand on his holster, as the SUV screeched past, missing us by inches. A brick sailed through my car's windshield, a note tied to it, "You can't run forever." My hands shook as I handed it to Jake, who called the police. "This isn't just family drama anymore," he said, his jaw tight. "They're playing for keeps." I didn't sleep that night, the SUV's roar echoing in my head, the note's words burning behind my eyes. Who were they? My parents? Ethan? Or someone else? Someone tied to that mysterious USB. The next morning, Rachel called with a bombshell. "The USB's encryption is military grade, but we cracked a fragment," she said. "It mentions a Cascade group, a real estate syndicate, with a rap sheet for fraud and coercion. Your parents' names are all over it." My stomach churned. The Cascade Group was infamous in Seattle's underbelly, known for strong-arming homeowners into signing over properties for pennies. Had my parents planned to hand my condo to them? Was Nexus AI's tech, my life's work, part of their deal? The questions gnawed at me, but answers were out of reach. The USB's full contents remained locked, and Rachel's tech team was working around the clock to break it. I threw myself into work, hoping to drown the fear, but the hits kept coming. A whistleblower email landed in my inbox, sent from a burner account. "Ethan's feeding your code to Zenith Tech. Check your servers." Zenith Tech was Nexus AI's biggest rival, a corporate giant with a history of stealing startups' IP. I called Marcus, who ran a diagnostic, and found unauthorized access attempts on our servers, traced to an IP in Tacoma. "They're not just after your condo," Marcus said, his face pale. "They're trying to gut your company." I ordered a full security overhaul, but the betrayal cut deeper than any code breach. Ethan, my own brother, was selling me out. The stress was eroding me. I'd always been sharp, unshakable, but now I was jumping at shadows, double-checking locks, and waking from nightmares of faceless figures in my condo. Ava noticed the change, dragging me to a dive bar in Fremont to breathe. Over cheap whiskey, she laid it out plain. "Claire, they're not just desperate, they're dangerous. You can't keep playing defense." She was right, but the weight of it crushed me. I'd spent my life proving I wasn't the obedient daughter they'd raised, but now I was fighting to prove I deserved my own life. Then came the call that nearly broke me. My grandmother's old lawyer, Harold Weiss, reached out, his voice trembling with urgency. "Claire, I found something in your grandmother's files, a hidden will she wrote before she died. It names you as the sole heir to a trust fund, $500,000, 0 cents, that your parents never disclosed." I gripped the phone, my mind racing. My grandmother, who'd always been kind but distant, had left me a fortune. "Your parents fought to control it," Harold continued. They claimed you were too young, too reckless. I think they've been siphoning it for years. The revelation was a gut punch. Not only had they tried to steal my condo, my company, they'd robbed me of my inheritance long before I'd even known it existed. I met Harold at his office, a cluttered space in Bellevue smelling of old coffee and paper. He slid a yellowed document across his desk, my grandmother's signature unmistakable. "There's more," he said, lowering his voice. "The will mentions a safety deposit box in her name, contents unknown. Your parents tried to access it after her death, but the bank refused without your consent." My heart pounded. What was in that box? Evidence of their past frauds? Something tied to the Cascade Group? I leapt with a copy of the will and a key to the box, my hands trembling with possibility. That night, my safe house's alarm blared, shattering the silence. Jake burst in, gun drawn, as glass crunched from a broken window. Someone had thrown a rock through it, wrapped in a note. "The box stays buried, or you will too." I froze, the key burning a hole in my pocket. Jake swept the house, finding no one, but the message was clear. Someone knew about the will, the box, and they were watching. I called Rachel, who urged me to open the box under police protection. "Whatever's in there," she said, "it's scaring them enough to risk everything." The next day, I drove to the bank with Jake and 2 officers, my nerves frayed. The safety deposit box was a steel vault in a sterile room, and as I turned the key, I braced myself. Inside was a stack of documents, a USB drive, and a handwritten letter from my grandmother. Her words were a knife to my heart. "Claire, if you're reading this, you've found the strength I always saw in you. Your parents will try to take what's yours. Don't let them. This trust is your freedom. The USB holds proof of their crimes." I clutched the letter, tears blurring my vision, as the officers photographed the contents. The USB contained financial records, transfers from my grandmother's accounts to my parents', linked to the Cascade Group. They'd been stealing from her, and now they were coming for me. But the danger wasn't over. As we left the bank, a black SUV, the same one from the alley, roared up, its window rolling down. I dove behind Jake as a gunshot cracked, the bullet grazing his shoulder. The SUV sped off, leaving chaos in its wake. Jake, blood seeping through his jacket, waved off the pane, barking orders to the officers. "Get her out of here!" I was shaking, the USB clutched in my hand, my grandmother's letter. The police traced the SUV's plates to a shell company tied to the Cascade Group, confirming my worst fears. My parents weren't just greedy, they were entangled with criminals. Rachel filed new charges: attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud, while I holed up in a new safe house, this one in West Seattle, its windows barred and cameras on every corner. Nexus AI was teetering, the board demanding answers, my investors pulling back. Then came another blow. A client forwarded me an email, supposedly from me, confessing to mental instability and stepping down as CEO. It was a forgery, sent from an account linked to Ethan's IP. I called an emergency board meeting, presenting the USB's evidence and my grandmother's will, proving my parents' campaign to destroy me. The board rallied behind me, but the clock was ticking. Zenith Tech was circling, ready to poach our clients if we faltered. Eva pushed me to fight back publicly. "You're Claire Morgan," she said, slamming her fist on her kitchen counter. "You built Nexus AI from nothing. Don't let them rewrite your story." I took her advice, scheduling an interview with a major tech outlet to set the record straight. But the night before, my phone pinged with a text from an unknown number. Talk, and your company burns. Attached was a photo of my condo, flames licking the windows. I called 911, racing to Belltown with Jake, only to find firefighters battling a blaze in my home office. The damage was contained, but my servers, backup drives for Nexus AI's core algorithms, were ash. Ethan was spotted nearby, but he slipped away before police could nab him. I went ahead with the interview, my voice steady despite the fear. My family tried to steal my home, my company, my legacy, I told the reporter, laying out the fraud, the threats, the fire. But I'm not backing down. Nexus AI is my life's work, and I'll protect it with everything I have. The article went viral, painting me as a David against my family's Goliath. Investors called, reaffirming their support. Clients returned, inspired by my resilience, but the victory was bittersweet. My condo was uninhabitable, my trust in family shattered. Then came a breakthrough. Rachel's tech team cracked the stolen USB's full encryption, revealing a bombshell. My parents had funneled $1 million, 0 cents, from my grandmother's trust into the Cascade Group, using it to fund a Ponzi scheme disguised as real estate deals. My condo was meant to be their next collateral, my company their backup plan if it failed. Ethan, it turned out, had been promised a cut by Zenith Tech to leak our code, a betrayal that cut deeper than any fire. I handed the evidence to the FBI, who launched a federal investigation. Arrest warrants went out for my parents and Ethan, who'd vanished, leaving only a taunting note, "You won't win, Claire." The final twist came from Lisa, my aunt, who met me for coffee in a quiet cafe. "Your father had a secret account," she whispered, sliding me a bank statement. "He was skimming from your early investors, claiming it was for family investments. The account held $300,000, 0 cents, enough to fund their attacks on me. I turned it over to Rachel, who added it to the FBI's file. The net was closing, but I couldn't shake the fear that they'd strike again before it did. As the weeks passed, I rebuilt. I moved back into my condo, its scars patched with fresh paint and new servers. Nexus AI stabilized, our stock rebounding as clients praised my transparency. I started therapy, working through the grief of losing the family I thought I had. One evening, surrounded by Ava, Lisa, and my team, I hosted a small gathering in my rebuilt condo. The skyline sparkled, a reminder that I'd survived. "You're unstoppable," Ava toasted, raising a glass. I smiled, feeling the weight lift just a little. My grandmother's letter sat framed on my desk. "Your strength is your freedom." I'd found mine, not just in fighting back, but in choosing who my real family was. Those who lifted me up, not tore me down. The FBI called days later. My parents were in custody, Ethan still at large. A cryptic email arrived that night. "Check your offshore accounts. They're watching." I froze, the words a chilling reminder that the fight wasn't over. What accounts? Who was watching? The questions hung heavy, but I wasn't the scared girl who'd fled her condo. I was Claire Morgan, and I'd face whatever came next. If you've ever fought for what's yours, share your story below. Like and subscribe to follow my journey. I'm not done yet.